Good afternoon. I'm Christine Pazhevsky with the Olean Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today with Patrick Rost, the owner of InfoSecurity Blueprint. Patrick is going to be talking about the AI conversation that we should have had 6 months ago. So at the end of the presentation, I will be back to answer your questions. There's a Q&A session at the end, so don't worry, we will get to everyone's questions on this hot topic. So Patrick, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Christine. Happy to be here at the Greater Olean Chamber of Commerce, and I'm happy that all of you are able to join, and I thank you for that. So this is the AI conversation we had 6 months ago. In all reality, that could say a year ago, that could say 2 years ago, but at least by 6 months ago, hopefully, you started having some of these conversations. And I'm going to start with the poll. This will be the first question. I'll bring up another screen in just a second. It'll have a QR on it or a URL you could type in. And I just want to know, are you using AI? So you can either scan the QR and do it on your phone, or if you type in the slido.com and then you can put that code in, you'll be able to vote. And then leave that screen up because I'm gonna have two polls right after this, and they'll automatically come up once you're signed in there. So I'll give everyone a chance to get in. If anybody's just joining, we're just doing a poll. You can use the QR to vote on your phone, or you can type in the URL on the screen and it'll prompt you for that code. And then give everybody a second just to bring it up, and then keep that poll up, and then we'll go on to additional polls afterwards.
So that was very cool. I have to say, I never jumped back on. But you just have to, if anyone doesn't know how to scan a QR code with your phone, you use your camera, bring up your camera, and then sort of focus your camera on the QR code. And then in yellow, it's going to pop up and you can tap that link that it's trying to send you to called Slido. So that was
Yep.
very cool.
Okay, we'll just wait just another minute, give people a chance to get in. Okay. I am going to progress. That same QR and link will be up in a second. So if you didn't get in, you'll be able to on the next poll. And I didn't show the results because I know the answer is yes. Whether you you'll find out why. Whether you use it on purpose or not, it's embedded in everything. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kind of hinted at that in the webinar summary that AI is already in use at your business. So in one way or another, you may have approached it, or maybe you've made the decision not to use it, which is why you may have voted no. But I'm curious, with that in mind, how many tools do you use? Would you say it's one, two, three, or four plus? And then we'll bring that up. That should come up automatically if you kept the screen open. We'll wait just a minute for some votes to come in on this one. Okay, so it's looking like it's leaning towards one. Small amount of vote for two. Nobody at three or four plus. Okay, last chance to get a vote in, and then we'll move to the final poll. Okay, so another one for one. Okay, so let's move to the final one. And so, has your business evaluated the security risks of using AI? So either yes, formally, somewhat, or no. Okay, leaning towards no. One formal evaluation in there. All right. Thank you for participating in the poll. So I'm going to move on, and we'll we'll circle back and you'll see why these are relevant in a little bit as we progress, but just wanted to capture a little info there, see how people feel about AI and how it's being used. So 75% no, 25% formal. Um, so I'm going to start with some terminology, make sure that we're all looking at AI the same way and understanding what the different terms are. So the model or the LLM, large language model, that's the power behind the AI. That's what actually generates the answer, does the processing. That's probably what you've heard of the most are the model names, the product names or the model names. The product is what you log into. So you see a screen or software on your screen, and that's the product, and behind it is the model. And we'll see a breakdown of that on the next slide, make that a little more clear. And then training data is what the model learned from. The earlier generations, the first releases of models didn't have internet access, couldn't go out and do research. So they were trained on a set of data. By time we logged into them, the data might be 6 months to a year old, and it would give you an answer from whatever date it was trained up to. So from there, it would provide an answer to the best of its ability. So if you went in, last year, especially 2 years ago, and you said, who won the Super Bowl this year? It would probably give you previous year's winner and say, in this year, and it'd give you the previous year, this is the team that won. But if you went out and asked any of the models today, they would go out and do the research and they would cite NFL.com or ESPN.com or some source and say the winner this year was, and they give you this year's date. So that's a little bit of where we've come, that it's still based on training data, but they have research enabled where they can go look for answers. And then agent is a model that takes actions on your behalf. It's more than just the typing in an answer, getting an answer back that I was just describing. You can ask an agent to do something, and it'll go out and it'll fulfill the task. Sometimes interact with another agent, set them off to do a task, and have agent teaming that will perform sets of tasks, report back to your agent, and then back to you. So we'll talk a little bit about the agents later, but that's really where a lot of these AI companies are moving towards agentic AI, where it's not just a research tool or something that'll create text for people or however our initial way we've been using it. It's they want those agents out there that it's actually operating independently like software. So a little naming convention, this is where you'll see the difference in the product and the model. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, the products down the middle, probably what you're most familiar with. The companies behind them are on the left. That's OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. Those aren't unique AI products or models. Those are just the companies behind those products. And then as of a couple weeks ago, when I put this slide together, those were some of the latest models that those companies had. So ChatGPT's was GPT 5.6 Sol, the Claude Opus 5, Gemini 3.1 Pro. Those are the latest that were available. Claude also has Sonnet 5 and Fable 5. Those are lead products, but Opus 5 is the most available and the newest right now. And then one question that some people might be thinking of is, wait a minute, I hear a lot about Microsoft Copilot. Where is that? So the reason this is quite a little bit of an exception is Microsoft hasn't developed their own product or own model. They rely on other models. They were originally aligned with ChatGPT. They took their early models, brought it in-house, and none of the AI usage in Copilot left Microsoft because they had their own model operating internally. It wasn't operating out at OpenAI's servers. Over the past few months, they've expanded and they have things like Claude and other models that can be used by Copilot. But when those are used, it sends the data out to Anthropic or to whatever other models are being used, and an answer comes back. So it leaves that Microsoft environment. My early recommendation to a lot of companies was if you're already using Microsoft for your email and you have Copilot available, I would lean into that and use it because it's Microsoft is already a trusted vendor. That answer has changed a little bit because Microsoft might be sending that data outside of your environment out to a different model, and you might not know which model it's using because it happens in the back end. In addition, there's a range of other software that you might use in your environment. Here, I use your CRM vendor as a generic example. because they might have a product that they call an AI assistant that's working within your software. And they use various models. So you see question marks on the screen because you have to look into your specific software, your specific CRM, or whatever the platform is, and find out what is it using. Is it enabled? Is it on by default? Can you turn it off? Can you pick who it uses? There's a lot of options there that you have to go through and determine. So using a couple of lead CRM vendors as examples, we have HubSpot and Salesforce. Might not be what you use in your business if you're, sole entrepreneur like myself or small business, but they are recognizable names. HubSpot uses a product called Breeze as their AI assistant, and they use several different models, and it's published per feature. So depending on the feature you're using in HubSpot, it might use one model, no model, different model. And then Salesforce is similar. They have something called Agentforce, and they use several, and it depends on the configuration. Part of that is that Salesforce lets you bring your own model, BYOM, and you can tell it, hey, I have a subscription here, use this model, and it'll actually link up that way. Otherwise, they might use whatever they determine on the configuration. HubSpot also uses agents so, within those various models. So they have um, different capabilities where they can have an agent go out and research contacts for you or information about contacts to generate lead lists and things like that. So there's a little bit of agentic AI built into HubSpot. That's kind of the way that a lot of the software is going. So if you don't use one of those companies, you have to do some research on your own and say, hey, does mine use it? Do I want to use it? How do I use it? Where's it going? Because you might have sensitive contact lists or information that you're putting about contacts. And then if they're sending it out to AI you're not aware of, it might be going further outside the boundaries than you think it is. And so beyond where you're comfortable with that data going. So one note I'll put on this slide, because you'll see examples of it, is all underlined text in this presentation are hyperlinks. So if you email me after the presentation, I do have my contact info on the final slide, or you fill out the feedback form that I'll have in the final slide, there's a spot to put your email in. I will send you a copy of these slides, and all of those underlined things you see down the middle and throughout the presentation are links, and they'll take you right to documentation for those products or wherever the link is referencing. So if you do have HubSpot or Salesforce, those are both links. They'll take you right to their documentation for those. So I'm going to proceed to one question that a lot of people ask. Which model's best? I want to start using AI. Where should I put my money? What should I use? So a couple weeks ago, I put that prompt. What is the best AI model out today? What are the two closest runner-ups? Include reasoning why. And I asked Claude Opus 5. And that responds to what it said. I'll give you a ranked pick with the caveat that matters most. I'm Claude, made by Anthropic, so I have an obvious conflict of interest. So pretty upfront that, it might rate itself high. And it did. So it said Claude Opus 5 was neck and neck with Fable 5 as being the best model, followed by GPT 5.6 Sol, followed by Gemini 3.1 Pro. I actually asked that question after building the table a couple slides ago, but it just so happens that those three are the lead models. So it's fitting that those are the ones that I used earlier. So I was curious, is it really Claude that is the best model? Or can I ask ChatGPT 5.6 Sol for the answer and get a different response? Copied the prompt, put it into 5.6 Sol, and it said Claude Opus 5 and Fable 5 are the leaders, followed by 5.6 Sol, followed by Kimi K3 Max, which is one that I had never heard of. So if you're tilting your head, I don't blame you. I did follow up with ChatGPT and say, why do you rank that first? Which is best for general purpose? And it said, oh, well, if you're ranking general purpose, I would say Gemini 3.1 Pro. It kind of got in its own head about how it was ranking them and ranked Kimi Max third, but it did kind of take a step back and say 3.1 Pro is third. So I figured I'd just round out the experiment, ask Gemini 3.1 Pro what it thinks, and it thought the same. So despite having that conflict of interest, Claude did return an answer that was backed up by the other two models, and both Opus 5 and 5.6 Sol linked to similar research, which is where I got its answer from. So it wasn't just ranking on its own, it was actually researching published web pages of people who've used different measures to determine which is the strongest. Now, something that they both did share in their answer, Opus 5 said, short answer, there isn't one. And the honest version of this question is best at what? And I think that's an important question is this is a general purpose list. So best at what are you trying to accomplish? And even then it said that they're pretty close. 5.6 Soul said the important caveat, there really isn't a 1990s chess style undisputed champion anymore. That was the case when AI was coming out. It was this is clearly the best model, go use it. But as we've seen over the past few years, every month or couple months, a new model comes out from each of these companies. So Opus 5 may have been the top when I did this. And as of this presentation or next week, ChatGPT might release their new model. It might jump up to one. So I bet every month or every couple of months this is switching. I think the margins are razor thin. If you're using any of these, you're getting, best in the industry for general purpose at least, unless you really niche down into a specific use case. And I think that brings in the importance of using strong prompts. So usually your results are only as good as what you put in. So for an example, write a follow-up email to a prospect. If you put that into AI, you'll get this. Following up, and then the body of the text. Subject, following up. Hi, placeholder. I wanted to know, follow up about our conversation and see if you've had a chance to think about placeholder. Based on what you shared about placeholder, I think we could help with placeholder. Would you be open to a quick 15-minute call next week to discuss whether it makes sense to move forward? Best placeholder. If you're looking for a generic email that you can go fill out those placeholders and send it to 100 different people, okay, you have a draft of an email. If you wanted to send it to someone specific, you're just going to be doing all the work anyway. You might as well type the email to begin with. So if what you really wanted to know was this, put this in as your prompt. I own a small landscaping company in Buffalo. I met Dana, office manager at a 30-person dental practice, at a chamber event last week. She mentioned their parking lot island looks terrible and they've had trouble with their current provider not showing up. She doesn't have a final budget authority. Write a follow-up email under 150 words, friendly but not salesy, that references the unreliable service and proposes a 15-minute walkthrough of the property. Don't use the phrase touch base. Provide a lot more context, a lot more parameters, so it's going to give you a better draft that's more focused for Dana. The subject, already better. Quick walkthrough of the property. Hi, Dana. It was great meeting you. So I don't want to read through the whole thing, but you can see when if you go through there, it's very intentional. You mentioned and it puts in that information. I'd be happy to stop, do a walkthrough, and then the only placeholder in there is your name, which if you gave it your name, it would fill in for you. So it really rounded this down from being a template to being specific that you can copy and paste this. And I'll always say review it, but it's probably ready or very close to being ready to send to Dana. A lot better than the other one where you had to fill in all the placeholders anyway. A couple of the things that made that a stronger prompt include who you are, your business, and your role. The specific situation, including names, numbers, things that were said in conversation. Put your constraints in there, the length of the email, the tone that you want, the format that you want it. If you want a message to be more direct, you could say that. But in ours, we said that we want it to be friendly and not salesy. Clear ask. What should the output accomplish? 15-minute walkthrough. We put that in there, so put it right in the email for us. And then you can put what you want to avoid, a phrase, a cliche, approaches you don't want. AI is known for putting M dashes in everything. So you could say no M dashes, whatever you want. We said don't use touch base, and it didn't. So this prompt worked better because of the additional information that was added. But you do have to keep in mind some of that may have been said in confidence. Maybe that's not something that Dana would want out in the public. So you can't say, hey, you told me about your security breach last week. I'm just following up. Maybe that shouldn't be sent by email. It's not something I would send by email. Be a little more discreet in sending it, and I'm not going to share it with my AI. So I always tell everybody my first bit of advice is to treat AI like an intern. And the first part of that is that you wouldn't handle or hand them data that you wouldn't hand AI data you want to give to an intern. You're not going to share everything. You're not giving them your bank account information just so they can sign in and look at your bank accounts or your QuickBooks or your HR data. You're not giving them that most sensitive data. You're not giving them direct access to anything that's proprietary, right? You're really going to screen what you're giving an intern, and over time you'll build trust and you'll share more, but you're probably still limiting and you're never sharing that extent of it. So when it comes to AI, you have to do the same thing and don't throw your company financials in and be like, "Hey, am I doing good this year?" Like it's probably something that you don't want shared out and into AI. And this is especially true on free accounts because by default, training the data is on, and on a free account, you can't turn that off. So if you throw your financials in, you've added to that training set that I talked about earlier. So the next person that can come in and prompt the right way, it might return that data that you put in to them. If you have a business account, some of them will turn that off, or some will allow you to turn it off, but still on by default. So you need to check and see, I have a paid subscription. Can I turn off the ability to train on my data? If you've done your evaluation of an AI vendor and you have a subscription and you turned off that ability for them to train on your data, you can have higher confidence in what you're sharing. I'd still be careful. You obviously don't want to share anything that's super sensitive, proprietary, that's going to, you don't want it to be personal health information and breach HIPAA law, stuff like that. You still have to be careful, but you could get a little more comfortable with it if you have an account, you know it's not training on it. Second half of it is read the drafts they're giving to you. Read their outputs. You would never ask AI to, oh, draft me a marketing post. I'll just post it. Don't even run it by me. You'd probably be like, okay, let's see what you do. Maybe I gave you some feedback. Maybe you use the wrong branding colors or fonts or messaging, or you something that we would just never say. That's going to hurt our reputation. And you want to screen it and provide feedback. And if it's wrong, you could say, hey, this is wrong, update it, or I don't like the way this looks. What can we do about it? And you could send those prompts back to AI and it'll take your feedback and it'll change it. Or you take that draft and you edit it on your own. You put your skills to use. You just didn't have to start from a blank canvas. You started with a template or a first draft. And then anytime there's facts or data cited in it, research it on your own, make sure it's true. There there's a famous court case a couple years ago that the lawyer cited case law and the other attorney and the judge go, I don't know, I've never heard of these cases before. What are you referencing? And it turned out the AI had made up case names and numbers to sound legitimate that just never existed. So that attorney ended up being disbarred, lost their case. It's right, like your reputation's on the line. So anything that comes back, you need to research on your own and make sure that it exists. Anytime I ask AI to do research for me, I always say, provide me a list of stats that about this. It'll give me the list. But I also say, quote the text from your source so I can see not just the stat, I can see the body of text around it, and provide me a link to where you're getting it from. Makes it easier for me to go right to that link, see the article they're referencing, the source they're referencing, find that body of text, know it exists, know they didn't make it up, and read the context around it. Sometimes data or something will be presented, and out of context, it isn't really representing what you think it is. So I always go look it up, research it. The part that helps me with is that I'm not just endlessly going through articles looking for stuff or just trying to find different Google prompts, just a different way of looking things up and try to find the stats. It'll do a little bit more thoughtful research and provide the stats to me for me to then continue building my research off of. Beyond treating AI like an intern, those two examples I gave, the next couple things I talk about are here that AI really enhances threats that have existed and should be familiar to us. Stolen and compromised credentials are and have been one of the lead ways that accounts get compromised that impact small businesses, and that's still true, and it's even more true with AI. And that's because the AI will gather information quicker. It'll pull breach databases together quicker. It'll cross-reference a name out across the internet and pull back data and research about individuals. It'll find if the password's been breached, all of their usernames, all the potential passwords, and it could do that a lot quicker. Before you'd have to go out and buy a database and kind of sort through it, parse through it, and see if you could get breach data. you would have to search around and be like, oh, is this the same person as this? And try to match names. And a lot of that AI will do. And if it's not the breach password itself, it's information like maiden name and pets and mother's maiden name, right? That common security question. And it'll start building this record of a person that you can either start guessing their password or start attacking their security questions a lot easier and with more confidence than you could before. So it really enhances that threat. Phishing, we've been getting phishing emails and text messages and even phone calls for years, before AI existed. But do the emails look more convincing now? Do the texts look more convincing? Like they might be legitimate business. They might be someone that you feel that you should respond to, who's actually inquiring about something. It doesn't have the typos anymore. It doesn't have the improper English or weird formatting. I'm sure you get those as well, but the good attempts, they don't have it anymore. You can put an AI, hey, brush this up and make it look like, proper English. And you can even do it for a dialect, make it look like, someone in, Western New York and Buffalo, New York and Olean, New York would sound like, or make it sound like it's someone from the South because I'm emailing them from, Tennessee or, wherever. And they could get a little bit of the dialect and wording in there and make it even more believable. And that does extend into voice and video. The old scam would be call a person, act like a daughter or a granddaughter or grandson, and hey, I just got arrested, I need help, or hey, they kidnapped me, I need help, and it'd be someone mimicking a voice, and they would hope that it was close enough, and over the phone connection, once you get that little bit of emotion, then you'd be like, oh shoot, I need to do whatever they're asking. But now AI can create the synthetic voice and it'll sound even closer, especially when you get it over a phone connection, which might be a little rough. So it's not just a person mimicking a voice anymore. It's actually creating voices. And if the attacker has samples of the voices, they can use that to pretty realistically create the fake voice, the AI generated voice. And when you think of the amount of data and information that's shared on social media and the amount of videos that might be that voices could be captured from if they're made public. Attackers have the possibility of going out, seeing public social media videos of our day at the fair, or check out this vacation, or maybe someone reading off of something or ranting or narrating a video they're recording, and if that's out there, it's all data, sample voice that could be put in. And video has changed a lot over the past year, even because the original AI consideration was okay, they could mimic this part of the face, but the rest of it you still had to dress the part and you had to fake. And the initial advice was make them stand up because the filter over the face would fall off, or make them put their hand in front of their face because it would break the filter, or spin around in their chair, or stand on their chair. Just all these like absurd things of prove that you're human and I'm actually seeing your face. And over the past few months, the newer AI or backed software, none of that breaks it. It'll if I turn my face, it'll without seeing any seams or anything, it'll keep that fake face on. And even if I'm doing all this, like it won't change it. So videos are becoming more and more believable. And going back a couple years to the older versions, there was a bank executive who got on a voice meet or a video meeting, and there were half a dozen or more of the senior leadership of the bank on there with them, and they had a meeting, and they had several meetings, and they discussed transactions, and the people he was on the meeting with requested he sent transfers, and each meeting it was more transfers, and at the end he transferred away millions of dollars, multiple millions of dollars, and found out that every person that had joined that meeting, every face and every voice was AI, and it wasn't the people that he works with, who he meets with on a regular basis and recognized. So, that's it's a scary situation that you can't trust what you're seeing or hearing anymore. But that was a reality for him a couple years ago with the models that weren't quite as strong. And then unpatched software, there's vulnerabilities coming out all the time and are being identified all the time in hardware and software. And the past couple months, we have seen in the news that Claude had their their model actually had to be delayed in being released, and they did a limited release to about 40 large companies, banks, critical infrastructure, and gave them a 2 month exclusive access to it because it was strong enough to identify vulnerabilities that nothing had identified before, some of them going back over 20 years. And they knew if it was released publicly that people would take advantage of it and attack those vulnerabilities at these, Fortune 100 companies and critical infrastructure companies. And they couldn't let it be public before that limited release came out. So the power of AI to be able to identify those new vulnerabilities that software just hasn't is there. So it makes it easier for someone who doesn't have those technical skills to increase their abilities and have a lower barrier of entry to being, a bad actor and attacking. So after all that, hopefully it didn't scare you too much, and you're probably like, well, what do we do about that? So I do have some recommendations, starting with enabling multi-factor. It's been the recommendation for against stolen credentials, compromised accounts, and it really is one of the lead recommendations still. On top of your proper password hygiene, enable multi-factor. That way, you have an app on your phone or a text or email goes to your phone. If you're the only one that has your phone or access to those accounts, it's an additional layer of proof that you are the one signing in. So if especially on critical accounts, multi-factor should be enabled. Really, any account that you put any value in, it's a lot less of a hassle to put that code in every time you access the account than it is to have that account compromised, lost, stolen, and fraud occur. You'll spend a lot more time trying to fix fraud at a bank or get your identity back if it was stolen than you will typing in multi-factor codes. So enable them anywhere you can. And then for your businesses, provide and require the use of password managers. Whether this is for yourself, employees if you have them, buy a if it's just for yourself, you can get a free version. There's free versions out there you can use. If you have employees and you're looking to provide it across your business, there's corporate subscriptions you can get. They cost, whatever it is per employee per month, typical subscription model, and that gives you the ability that you can see some data about the way they're using the password manager and their passwords. You don't see their passwords themselves, obvious security reasons, but you can see that um, whatever number of them are good passwords or weak passwords, if they're duplicating passwords. And some of those things that if they're going against password best practice, the password manager will report on it. And you can have a conversation about, hey, you use the same password across 20 accounts. Can you go change 19 of them and stop reusing the password? So that's why I recommend it for businesses. Um, if it's just for yourself, even on a personal level, you can get a free one. Start using them. It'll store your passwords. It'll generate random passwords. You can make them long, complex. You don't have to remember them. Password manager autofills them. You sign in. It's actually an easier way to access sites than trying to remember and type out passwords. It's a secure autofill feature, basically. The biggest or the next step in password security is pass keys. This leverages the use of multi-factor by adding what's called a pass key to your password manager. So when you sign in, you put in your username, and then it prompts your password manager, and you just click accept, and it sends a pass key. You don't even have a password. So once an account moves to pass keys only, you can't have a password to compromise. Somebody can't sign in somewhere else. They have to sign in your multi-factor and hit allow, or sign in your password manager using multi-factor and hit allow, and they can't compromise a password. So any critical system that supports passkeys move to it. It's becoming more and more available. So I recommend moving that way. For phishing, verify everything by a known method, typically a known phone number, especially if it has to do with moving money, especially has to do with resetting passwords, any critical account access process should have additional verification. So if you have a phone call comes to you, pops up with your bank name, or a contact in your phone comes up, you okay, talk to them like, hey, we need to transfer whatever. Here's the information, or change direct deposit or for an employee or something. Okay, well, it's a number I recognize, it's a voice I recognize. the number can be spoofed, that voice could be cloned, so you can't trust it. Incoming call like that is not a way of verifying changes like that. You can tell, okay, I'm going to follow our normal process, hang up with them, and your normal process should be, I'm going to dial the number and call them because I know that'll go to their phone, even if it looked like it was coming from their phone, and just say, hey, I have that request that you asked ready to go. Is it okay to send it? And either they're gonna be like, yep, I just called you. I've been waiting for that. Like, send it as soon as you can. Or they're gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, again, just like multi-factor, you will spend a lot less time calling people back and just saying, hey, final verification, is this what you requested? Than you will if you don't do that and you send the money out and you have less than 24 hours to get it back from the bank, because typically after 24 hours, that money's transferred out of the country and you can't get it back. So I always recommend adding that additional verification. Typically by phone is best. Um, there's other ways to do it, but other systems you can use. But if it's transferring money, resetting credentials, do it by phone. And then in addition, include that in your mandatory security awareness training. What that process is, or how your employees should be acting, and in general, current AI topics. Find out, what's this latest model doing? How are attackers using it? What are the different methods? Something a lunch and learn like this is a good way to, become a little more savvy about it, but it changes so fast, and there's a lot more training that could get a lot more in depth than, what I'm able to do today on this webinar. But so keep that training out there. Make sure it's current. Make sure every couple months it's updated with the latest threats, and make sure you're aware of it for yourself. And if you have employees, that they are required to take it so that they're aware as well. And for the software, short answer here: enable automatic updates. You can do that in your workstations. You could do that on servers. You could do that on a lot of hardware. If the system's too critical, you can't do automatic updates, then evaluate the patches as soon as they come out and prioritize putting them in based on how critical they are. If it's critical, schedule that maintenance window as soon as you can, get the patch in, and get updated. You'll spend a lot less downtime scheduling your maintenance sooner than you will if somebody takes advantage of that vulnerability and compromises the system. So a lot was said on there. If you have questions, again, my contact info will be up. You can either submit the question, I can answer it live, or you can shoot me an email and I can help answer questions, clarify anything. I did touch on these and some other things in my June newsletter, so that's a link I have there. You could find me on LinkedIn to get to my newsletter and get some more info there. And then after those basics, after treat your AI like an intern and the things I just covered, my next recommendation is an AI policy. So like I said early on, one way or another, you and maybe without your knowledge, your employees are going to be using AI. People are curious about it, want to use it, are aware that there could be productivity from using it. So, do you have a policy that allows the usage in a way that benefits your business, or is it being used in a way that hurts your business? If you put out AI policies, you can help encourage proper usage. So the first policy I would recommend is the AI acceptable use policy, just like a information security or electronics acceptable use policy you might have, and create one for AI. Have employees sign off they received it and understand, can you use AI or not? What AI can you use? Is it a specific one? Is it any but not this one? Detail what you expect out of your employees. I additionally recommend investing as a business in a paid subscription. You can get a corporate subscription, assign users, and then tell them we have a subscription to ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want to go with. Might be Copilot because you already have Microsoft. This is what our subscription is. This is the company approved AI. You're not allowed to use any others. The benefit that gives you is by providing it, you're giving them the path they should be using. You're not just saying, nope, don't use AI, because is that going to work? They're going to use it if they want to. And if they do, it's going to be their private account that is probably going to train in the data. So if you provide the corporate account, you can turn training off. And typically the paid accounts, especially when you get into business accounts, are more powerful. So is an employee going to use a free account that's not as powerful and isn't going to have all the features, or the feature-rich, powerful that they can get more requests out of? If you provide the better tier, they're more likely to use it. And then include AI throughout any other policies you have, any other information security policies. Some of the ones I talked about before should be part of the password policy, should be part of your training, that it's included in your training policy, and a part of your patch policy, that you're aware of the ways that you can use AI to defend against those things and be aware of the threats that are coming. Beyond those, include it in your inventory policy and your inventory itself. You should be inventorying software in use already, so you know what's approved software in your business. And AI is just the next software you put on that list. And then additionally, you at this point you have to add a column to that software inventory. So when you add your CRM, the example we used earlier, you have a column for AI subprocessors. So you know CRM, we use Salesforce, it uses potentially this, or this AI, and detail how it uses it. So you're aware of how far is your data going for the different subscriptions you have. Data classification is important because you could say in your policy, in the acceptable use, that you'll never upload sensitive information into AI. Okay, have you classified anything as sensitive, or are you just leaving it to the employee's discretion? If you leave it to the employee's discretion, then they may upload it. They may not use AI to its fullest, thinking that's more is sensitive than really is. So you should already have data classification, so you know that Social Security numbers are PII, that's sensitive. Any health information we have is PII or is PHI, that's sensitive. Credit card numbers, like those are things that we shouldn't be putting in because they're marked sensitive, or whatever name you want to give it. And then your AI policy can reference that classification you already have in your data classification. And that goes hand in hand with privacy. We will never upload names or details about individuals to try to keep their privacy intact. So include that as part of the acceptable use. That goes hand in hand with data classification, an extension of those. And when you're drafting your policies, scale them to your business. If you're a sole entrepreneur and you have a page or less than a page of acceptable use to help keep yourself online, that's all you need. You don't have, your acceptable use doesn't need to be 30 pages, right? Don't overdo it. If you're never going to reference it yourself, your employees aren't going to reference it. It really should be the size that makes sense for your business, that is direct to what should or shouldn't be done. And then if you're looking to hire, start building that out. Make sure it is phrased in a way that has employees in mind, and start building the policies up and scale it up with your business. Following all the security considerations, do want to talk about a couple ethical considerations. So you'll see them listed. We'll start with water usage. So that quote, a typical AI query uses 5 drops of water, and beyond that, or about 1/15 of a teaspoon. Those are two actual quotes or measurements by two of the leading AI companies. That's what they report themselves because they want to downplay the amount of water that's being used. If they can make it sound like, oh, you ask a question and it uses 1/5 of a teaspoon, do you even know how small a teaspoon is, right? Like people can start to say, oh, well, it's not that much water, right? But when you think of the amount of use that a person could do in a day, 15 prompts, right? A person could do that on their own in a day and multiply it out by a year by millions of people using it. So it scales, but if you don't look at that scale, you don't see it that way. So some research I found 2023, and keep in mind this is 3 years ago. This is early AI, and in early days, all data centers, not just AI, they use 17 billion gallons, and that's just at the data centers themselves. And then if you include the power generation and the water required as part of the power generation for AI, that goes up to 228 billion gallons. So a small part of it is used at the data centers itself, and then even more is used to generate the power for those data centers. A comparison in that research was they used, I think it was 5 to 10 years leading up to 2023 to get their averages, but the annual average for golf courses was 531 billion gallons, and residential showers was 1,700 billion gallons. So you can see at the 2023 numbers, data centers still are a little short of golf courses and showers, but that's still half as much as golf courses, is still a lot of water. Since then, it's estimated usage is expected to climb from that 17 billion gallon number in 2023 up to 68 billion, over 300% growth by 2028. We're less than a year and a half away from the beginning of 2028, so I don't know when in that year that number or prediction may come true, but we're less than 2 years away potentially. So that's very rapid growth. That is spurred by AI. That 17 to 68 billion jump is very largely because of AI. And when you think of that being the data center usage only, that 228 billion gallon number from that includes the power generation portion, that jumps up to 906 billion. So it'll be approaching double in golf courses instead of being half of golf courses. And and beyond 2028, it's going to just keep growing. So we can look at the limited usage or the 2023 usage and kind of put it in a bucket of okay, that's not it's a significant amount, but it might be not a lot in comparison. But the growth, the projected growth, and the amount of focus being put in on AI usage is certainly going to have that grow. And then on top of those numbers, it's projected that about two-thirds of US data centers that current or through those projections are already in water stressed areas. So when you think of, the West Coast and California, Virginia, some places like that are already water stressed, and that's where data centers are going in. So that's really just going to start draining those fresh water sources there. So we mentioned power usage in the water discussion. U.S. data center demand is forecast to increase from 31 gigawatts to over 67 gigawatts by next year. So that's nearly going to double within the next, 6 to 12 months. Tech companies, the large companies behind the bigger models we saw, and some others have committed billions of dollars to build 10 gigawatts of nuclear capacity over the next few years, including Microsoft revitalizing 3 Mile Island, which is a name you might recognize because it didn't go so well. And to put the numbers into perspective, California's peak hour energy deficit is 2 to 4 gigawatts, and that impacts 1.3 million homes. So if we're talking about adding 30 gigawatts in the water stressed areas or in the next, year, and they're committing to build 10 gigawatts nuclear capacity, that is enough that could satisfy that California's energy deficit of 2 to 4 gigawatts, but it's going for data center usage and AI usage instead. And the intellectual theft is a big one. So early days, many models were trained on data without permission, and that'll show has the potential to show up in your outputs. There's been a lot of very notable court cases from musical artists, from various types of artists, from writers. There was a recently settled lawsuit among book authors where every book that was trained using a specific model, they had to pay out the author that was in that training set out a certain amount. And they're settling these cases left and right because they know that they did it. And part of the settlement is they have to go through and retrain their model without that data. So there's a lot of retraining that's happening. And the biggest water and power usage comes from that initial training of the model. So every time intellectual theft is discovered and they settle out of a case, they have to go retrain, use more water, use more power, go through that really intensive training process. Yeah. So lawsuits. So I mentioned lawsuits, various lawsuits out there that are in progress or that have been settled recently. So keep this in mind when we talk about reviewing your outputs. So you say, hey, draft me something that talks about this. And then you read through it, you go, oh, this sounds good. Was that trained on data that's not publicly available, that's licensed, that you shouldn't be using as your image that you're generating using parts of licensed images, either from photographers or artists or something like that? And are you then sharing that as your own? And with that, time to wrap it up. So some of the high points that we talked about, you're already using AI in your business, unless you have intentionally decided not to and turned it off. It's there, behind the software that you're using. So make sure you're inventorying your models, your software, and the models they're using, so you know what software it's built into. Name the tools that you approve, pay for the appropriate tier, include that in your acceptable use policies. Verify before you move money, reset credentials, verify those AI outputs, and be aware of the ethics. I certainly hope I didn't give the impression I was trying to direct people to feel a certain way on the last slide, but there are real implications there. So at least be aware of the numbers and what's happening, make your own decision on it, and know kind of what's happening there. So with that, I'm going to put my contact info up. My email address is right in the middle. Um, Other ways to contact me there. Everything on there that's underlined is a clickable URL. So if you email me, everything else you can click on. And then if you don't mind, while we're doing the Q&A, if you could scan that QR code or type in that tiny URL web page. I do have a real short feedback form, just a couple questions. I just like to know what you think worked well, what maybe you're hoping to learn you didn't, or would make it better. And part of that too is I'd like to follow this up at some point in the future, either with the Olean Chamber or other ways, and have more AI presentations and dig in a little deeper. So I know I kind of footed the line between here's how to use AI and security implications. So if you're like, oh, I really want to know more about security, throw it in the feedback form. Maybe I could spend an hour on it, another webinar or something. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions if there are any, and I'll do my best to answer those. And I'll just leave this slide up till we disconnect so you can get my contact info in the QR there.
That was an excellent presentation, Patrick. Thank you
Yeah, thank
very
you.
much for talking about a hot topic. Because I think that it's no matter what we want to do, whether we want to use it or we don't want to use it, it's part of our lives. And hearing about the advantages and the disadvantages are important.
Yep,
So you laid it out very clearly. So thank
thank you.
you.
No, I
I
appreciate that.
actually, what's that?
No, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. I had a question. So,
Okay.
um, you may have answered it. So, because there's so many free places to go and get information, like obviously ChatGPT has the free version. You can just go to that, I don't know if you call it a website, but you just
Hmm.
type in ChatGPT and you ask it the question and then it answers and it's free, right? So
Yep.
how with so many people using it, how do they make any money if it's free? I mean,
So that's a fun question because the answer is they're not making money yet. They're really kicking that can down the line, and they have been reporting losses consistently, and they have a lot of investor money, and they haven't started making money. So I think the thing that's unique about AI that's different from a lot of other technology that we've experienced is it was released before it was in its final version. So to me, it's still not in its final version. I think that it's behind all the software you're using, know who's using it. That's more of the end goal. This going to a web page and typing in a question, you won't be doing that much anymore in a few years. It'll still be around. I'm sure they'll have the feature, but I think it's gonna be a lot more built into other things you're using. That it's gonna be a research tool that you ask the question and then formats it in. Different things like that. So we're really seeing the early versions, and we're almost the live beta testers for this to see how it works, if it works well, provide that stress testing and that feedback and all that stuff because they really needed a large amount of people to do that. Where, by the time you get an iPhone or by the time Microsoft Word's pushed to your computer, people have beta tested it already. It should be in a working form. You never see all of the different versions that lead up to it in, any software, right? When you get your QuickBooks, it works. Sure, maybe they change features as you go, but it works. So I think this is just a rare example of, you know, they're using the mass population to test it and get feedback and see what the um, use case for people is.
I mean, because the when you would go years ago, I'm going to say like 5 years ago, if you had a question, You would just go and Google it. I mean, that's almost like the phrase, did what? Just Google it. So
Mm-hmm.
you could go to Google and type in who won the Super Bowl this year, and
Yep.
Google could tell you, like you said. So this just advances it with more detailed information and websites. Is that it?
Yeah, and Google's a good example because when they first came out, it was just like you're describing. You put it in, and it would give you, oh, here's 10 pages that might answer your question. It wouldn't even provide an answer. It would just say you type
Right.
in Super Bowl. Here's some pages that have Super Bowl on it, and maybe you can go find an answer. And then over time, and there were no sponsors or nothing like that. Over time, those search results got better and better. And then they started adding sponsors. So there's sponsors on the page. The top 2 to 4 are usually sponsored ads. So if you click on those, Google gets ad revenue from those sponsors. So that's part of the way that some AI is going as well, is they're taking sponsors and incorporating that into people's answers. So
I see.
that's part of where their funding is going to be coming from, is you can pay to sponsor to have your brand brought up more and things like that. So there's a little bit of integrity question there of, if I look something up, are you going to give me the truth or are you going to give me the sponsored truth? So
Mm. Mhm.
that's part of it too. But they part of how their attempt to break even too, to completely say they're just losing money, is when if you do pay for $30 a month for ChatGPT or something, a lot of people will pay that subscription, and then they don't use it enough to justify $30 a month. So they'll go in, they'll throw a couple questions in every couple of days or whatever. And when you calculate the cost of all the computing power behind it, maybe they use $10, maybe they use $20. Some super users will use hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the balance is, we have as big of a subscription base as we can because we're relying on a lot of people underutilize the subscription, and that allows it to have a free option as well. So a lot of that is kind of the typical subscription model, right? Like, you go to a
Mhm.
gym and they have 1,000 subscribers and 200 people that show up every day to work out, and people forget they have a subscription, they're still billing. It's we count
Mhm.
on a lot of people not utilizing the subscription.
Mm. So do you think if because it's free and the companies are losing money, that in the future it's not going to be free and then that would reduce the usage?
Yeah, so the way that it works beyond going to the web page and typing stuff in, on the back end, they have what they call API calls. So it's, my software communicates with the AI through API, or through the AI, yeah, AI through a lot of acronyms, sorry, but they talk in the back end. They talk in computer language. So um, a lot of places don't, a lot of businesses, when they get to that point where they're so integrated with it, they don't pay that $30 a month. They pay per token. So token's not a term I got into, but every part of a word is a token. So most words are 2 or 3 tokens depending on how big they are. So when you type in that response, that prompt that I showed earlier, that might use 50 tokens. And then it will send you a response, that drafted email, which will use 60 tokens. And each token costs, half a penny or something. So they charge based on the number of calls you send and the size of the calls and the size of the responses and the compute in the back end. And that's really where they're going to start making their money, is getting the businesses hooked right up. So you pay per usage, not on a subscription model. And when they can get businesses using it at scale, they'll pay for their usage at scale rather than, and that's why I think a lot of the web page interface that we're using will go away, is Claude wants to be the company that's behind your CRM, so that billions of prompts that go into HubSpot or whatever the CRM go to Claude, and then they could bill HubSpot, millions of dollars for the AI usage, and then HubSpot can pass that cost in their subscription or whatever to their users. So that's really the way the business model is going to be going, is it's going to be more expensive on the back end because you will be paying per usage, and it'll be built into the back end of our software.
So I mean that might mean more companies can afford that, but like the general student in college who's using it to write his papers may not be able to use it then, which is good. We don't want them to use it for their papers.
Right.
Or med students or lawyers,
Right.
that are in college. We
Yeah.
want them to to learn like we're supposed to learn. So maybe that would eliminate that problem we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think it'll lead to more companies. I mean, the examples you gave. So instead of having a med student who would go out to whatever AI they want to use and generate research or paper or whatever, there's going to be, med AI or whatever company comes up with it, and it's going to be an environment that is seeded with medical journals that you could then use the power of AI to search actual trained data of medical journals, almost like Google Scholar is, right? You can go to Google Scholar and it only searches published scholarly articles. So you're not searching the internet, you're searching published articles. So I think there's going to be AIs created for those specific use cases for med students, or there's going to be a dental one, or whatever it is that's going to be the thing you use, and you're just going to learn to operate differently with those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Okay, no questions in the Q&A, and I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
So, okay, if no one has any other questions, I had questions, but thank you. Maybe they want to keep them personal and send them to you
Yeah.
personally. So, seriously, thank you, Patrick. It was very interesting, a little scary, in some parts, just because I did receive a text message from my son, who's in his 20s, and he works and he has his own mobile phone for work. And he texted me from a number and said, "Hi, Mom. It's me, Sam. I'm texting from my work phone." And I was like, this does not seem right. So I
Hmm.
immediately called him on his regular phone and I'm
Yep.
like, "Did you just text me?" And he said, "No."
Yeah. Yep. Good.
And
No, that's a good example, right? Like
yeah,
it either they could have spoofed the work number, or maybe you don't have his work number. So you see a number that's not saved and it says it's a work number, right? My phone died, this is my work number. And you're like, oh, okay, I know he has a work phone. So yeah, no, good for you for reaching out to the other number. That's a
yeah.
good response. Yeah.
And that's what the message actually said. It said, "My phone died. I'm
Yep.
using my work phone." And I was like, "What?" That was weird. So,
Yep.
yeah, we just have to be aware. I mean, in all situations, whether we're at work or at home, just using good judgment, like you said, following up.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This presentation will be available on our website, which is oleanny.com. It just takes like 24 hours to get up on our website. This will also be sent out. The link to view this presentation will be available in our newsletter. So thank you very much. We will see you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.